She came to me for advice about love, but she had no idea how dangerous that question was. Before we begin, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from, and what do you think this story really is? The afternoon light was slipping through the half-closed blinds, cutting the study into thin stripes of gold and shadow. It was one of those quiet hours when the world feels content to move without you. I was sorting through old client files, half listening to the low hum of the air conditioner, when I heard a soft knock on the doorframe. "Mr. Hale?" I looked up. It was Lena, my daughter's friend. 24, maybe. Polite, always smiling when she came over. I hadn't seen her since my daughter's graduation party last spring. Today, she stood there with a hesitant smile, holding a small paper cup of coffee like she wasn't sure if she was welcome. "She told me she'd be back soon," Lena said. "Do you mind if I wait here for a bit?" I gestured toward the chair by the window. "Of course. Sit down." She did, but not properly. She perched on the edge, knees angled toward me, a restless energy in her movements. She looked around my study, the framed photos, the old records, the mess of books on the shelf, like she was searching for a piece of me she hadn't noticed before. After a few moments of quiet, she exhaled a small laugh. "Actually, I wanted to ask you something." Her tone caught me off guard, not playful, not nervous, but serious. Her eyes met mine, and for a moment I forgot how young she was. "Ask me what?" I said, setting my pen down. "It's about love," she said. "I figured you'd know better than most." I smiled faintly, though I wasn't sure if it was from flattery or discomfort. "That's a dangerous subject to bring to a man my age." She laughed, soft but real. "Maybe that's why I trust your answer." There was something almost innocent about the way she said it, yet the air between us shifted, subtly. The ticking clock grew louder. She didn't look away, not even when the silence stretched too long. I leaned back in my chair, searching for the right response, something simple enough to end the moment gracefully. But the truth was, her curiosity intrigued me. There was a sincerity in her eyes I hadn't seen in a long time, not from someone asking for advice, but from someone wanting to understand. "You want advice about love?" I said quietly. "All right then. What do you want to know?" She hesitated, fingers tightening around her cup. "How do you know if it's real?" The question hung between us, delicate as glass. And in that instant I realized, this wasn't about some distant crush. There was more to this question than she was willing to admit. I cleared my throat, keeping my tone calm, almost detached. "Love isn't always something you know, Lena. Sometimes it's something you notice too late." Her gaze softened, thoughtful, and for a brief, dangerous heartbeat, we weren't a man and a friend's daughter anymore. We were two people trying not to look too deeply at what had already begun. The next time she came by, it wasn't by accident. She said she was there to drop off something for my daughter, a forgotten sweater, I think, but she didn't leave right away. She lingered again, this time with a quietness that felt deliberate. I was in the same chair, surrounded by the same silence. The same golden light filtered through the blinds, though now the air felt heavier, aware of something unspoken between us. She set the sweater down and hesitated before speaking. "Can I ask you something else?" I nodded, trying to sound casual. "Depends on what it is." Her lips curved into a half-smile, though her eyes betrayed uncertainty. "It's still about love. I'm sorry if that's strange." "It's not strange," I said softly, though I knew it was. "Just complicated." She sat across from me this time, not perching on the armrest like before. Her knees brushed the edge of my desk. I could smell her perfume, faint vanilla, something warm and innocent. She was fidgeting with her fingers, trying to find the right words. "How do you know if someone loves you?" she asked finally. "And not just the way you make them feel?" The question landed heavier than I expected. It wasn't idle curiosity. It carried the ache of disappointment, the kind that comes from being seen but not known. I leaned back, studying her face. "Who's making you ask that?" Her expression flickered. "Just someone I was seeing. Older. Wiser." At least I thought so. The way she said older made the air tighten. I felt my throat go dry. I should have said something neutral, something fatherly. But instead, I found myself asking, "And what made you think he didn't love you?" She shrugged, her voice low. "He liked when I listened. When I admired him. But when I needed something real, he disappeared." Silence filled the room again, that delicate, dangerous silence where emotions grow louder than words. I wanted to tell her that men like that often mean well, but they get lost in their own admiration. I wanted to tell her that love isn't always kind, that it sometimes hides behind the illusion of control. But all I managed was, "Then he didn't deserve what you gave." She looked at me then, directly, deeply. "And what do you think love is?" Her question wasn't about the other man anymore. I could feel it. I let out a quiet breath, holding her gaze. "Love," I said, "is when you stop asking what it is." Her lips parted, just slightly, and for a moment she seemed to forget to breathe. The room felt smaller. The space between us thinner. The clock ticked again, too loud in the quiet. Then she stood, smoothing her skirt, her composure returning. "You always make it sound so simple," she whispered. "It's not," I said, my voice lower than I intended. "That's the problem." She smiled faintly, her eyes soft with something I didn't want to name. "Thank you, Mr. Hale." And as she walked out, I realized I hadn't blinked since she looked at me. That evening, the rain came without warning, the kind that starts as a whisper and turns into a confession. Lena had stopped by again, waiting for my daughter, who texted at the last minute to say she was staying at a friend's. When I told her, she frowned lightly, pulling her jacket tighter around her shoulders. Of course she'd forget to tell me. That's so like her. She smiled, a little embarrassed, a little uncertain. "It's late," I said. "You shouldn't wait for the bus in this weather. I'll drive you." She hesitated, probably out of politeness, but then nodded. "If you're sure you don't mind." I wasn't sure at all. But I took my keys. The car smelled faintly of cedar and rain. The wipers slid rhythmically across the glass, the only sound between us for the first few minutes. City lights blurred into streaks of gold and white on the wet road, reflections trembling like they didn't want to be seen. She watched them, her profile softened by the dashboard glow. "You know," she said, "I don't usually talk to people the way I talk to you." I glanced at her briefly. "Maybe you just needed someone who listens." She smiled, but not fully. "No. I think it's because you don't try to impress me." That one hit deeper than it should have. I focused on the road, trying not to let it show. After a while, she started telling me about her job, the pressure, the loneliness that comes from pretending to have it all figured out at 24. I didn't interrupt. Just listened, because she spoke like someone who had never been truly heard. "I keep thinking," she said softly, "maybe I just expect too much from people." "Or maybe," I said, "you're just expecting honesty." Her hand, resting on her lap, stilled. "You always make it sound simple," she murmured. "It isn't," I said again. She looked at me then, really looked. The rain had slowed, but my heart hadn't. When I pulled up in front of her apartment, she didn't move right away. The air between us felt suspended, delicate. "Thank you," she said finally, her voice low. "Not just for the ride. For everything." I nodded, keeping my hands on the wheel. "Anytime." Then it happened, small, unintentional. As she reached for her bag, her fingers brushed my arm. Barely a touch, yet it sent something through me I hadn't felt in years, a quiet, undeniable awareness. Neither of us spoke. The moment passed like a slow breath. She opened the door, stepping out into the rain. "Good night, Mr. Hale." "Good night, Lena." She hesitated, just long enough to look back. Then she smiled faintly, closed the door, and walked away under the streetlight's soft glow. I sat there for a while, engine running, rain whispering against the glass, wondering when simple conversation had begun to feel like temptation. It had been nearly 2 weeks since that rainy drive home. I told myself the quiet was a good thing, that she'd moved on, found her footing again. I tried not to notice that every time my phone buzzed, I half expected her name. Then, one evening, the knock came again. It was late, too late for casual visits. The house was dim, lit only by the faint amber of a single lamp near the fireplace. When I opened the door, she stood there with a small umbrella, her hair slightly damp, eyes glimmering with something fragile. "Sorry," she said softly. "I shouldn't just show up like this." But she stepped inside when I moved aside. She was holding a thin paperback, one of mine, one I'd lent her weeks ago, something about poetry and the way people mistake longing for love. "I came to return this," she said, her voice uneven. "And to tell you, I ended things with him." I said nothing for a moment. Just watched her, the way her fingers brushed the spine of the book like she was searching for courage. "I realized," she continued, "he didn't really see me. He liked the idea of me, quiet, patient, easy to impress. But when I needed him to understand me, he couldn't." I folded my arms, keeping distance I didn't feel. "That's something you learn the hard way." She gave a sad little laugh. "You warned me." "No," I said. "You warned yourself. You just needed to hear it out loud." Silence again. Only the sound of rain outside, softer this time, like memory replaying itself. She stepped closer, holding the book between us. "But you saw me. From the start." There it was, the shift. The words that couldn't be unsaid. I took a slow breath. "Lena, I'm not saying it's right," she interrupted quickly. I wanted you to know that it mattered. You mattered." I looked at her then, really looked. She wasn't the wide-eyed girl from my daughter's graduation party anymore. There was something steady in her, something unguarded but sure. I reached for the umbrella she'd left by the door, meaning only to hand it back, to anchor us in something normal. Our fingers brushed, brief, electric. She didn't move her hand away. "Lena," I said quietly, the weight of her name settling between us. "You're too young to be looking at me that way." She smiled, small, knowing, heartbreakingly calm. "Then stop looking back." For a moment, the whole house seemed to hold its breath. The air was heavy with everything we couldn't say. Finally, I let out a low exhale. "You should go before the rain gets worse." She nodded, though either of us stepped back. Then, finally, she did, one slow, reluctant step toward the door. As it closed behind her, the scent of her perfume lingered, soft, warm, impossible to ignore. And I stood there, realizing I hadn't felt that kind of ache in years, the kind that doesn't ask for permission. After that night, I decided space was the only honest thing left to give her. I told myself it was the right choice, that avoiding her wasn't cruelty, but protection. Yet somehow, that didn't stop me from glancing toward the driveway whenever a car slowed outside. Or from checking my phone too often, as though guilt had a ringtone. Days stretched into weeks. I kept busy, work, errands, the kind of quiet distractions men turn to when they're afraid of their own thoughts. But every evening ended the same way, me, in my study, staring at that empty chair where she'd once sat, legs tucked neatly, eyes full of unguarded questions. It's strange how silence can echo louder than words. My daughter didn't notice at first, but one Sunday afternoon she looked up from her phone and said casually, "Lena's been busy lately. You two haven't talked, huh?" I shook my head, pretending to focus on the newspaper. "No, not for a while." She grinned without looking up. "She says you're intimidating." "I think she means that as a compliment." I managed a small laugh, but my chest tightened. That night I sat at my desk long after midnight. The rain was back again, brushing the window with its familiar rhythm, the same rhythm from that drive. From that first moment I realized what I was feeling. There was a half-finished email open on my screen. I'd started it to a client, but somehow the cursor blinked after words that didn't belong there. Sometimes I miss conversations that never should have started. I deleted it before sending. The phone buzzed once, a single message. Her name. "Lena. I miss talking to you." Just that. No emojis. No pretense. I stared at the screen for a long time. I even typed a reply. I miss you too. Then I deleted it. Because what could I possibly offer her? A man twice her age, teaching her about restraint while secretly wishing she'd never learned it. I poured myself a drink instead, whiskey untouched. The kind of drink men use when they need something to hold, not something to taste. I told myself this ache would fade like everything else does, quietly, responsibly. But the truth was simpler, and far less noble. I didn't want it to fade. Because she'd reminded me of something I thought I'd lost, that small, terrifying spark of being seen again. And so, I let the distance stay. I let the silence do the talking, even as it gnawed at me. When I finally went to bed, the message was still there on my phone. Unanswered. Glowing faintly in the dark like a confession left hanging between two hearts that both knew the right thing, and neither could bear to do it. It happened months later, long enough for me to convince myself the chapter had closed, even if the memory hadn't. It was a Saturday evening. My daughter had invited a few friends over for dinner, and I hadn't asked who. I'd been cooking, something simple, something to keep my hands busy. Music played quietly in the background, a soft jazz record that filled the house with a calm I didn't entirely feel. When the doorbell rang, I wiped my hands on a towel and went to open it, and there she was. Lena. She stood there, holding a small box of dessert and that familiar, unsure smile. For a moment neither of us spoke. "Hi, Mr. Hale," she said finally, her tone light but careful. "Lena," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "It's been a while." She nodded. "I wasn't sure if I should come." "Of course you should," I said, though my heart didn't quite agree with my mouth. The evening passed in small, ordinary ways. Laughter at the table. My daughter teasing me about overcooking the pasta. Lena sitting across from me, not saying much, but meeting my eyes now and then, each time only for a heartbeat before looking away. She'd changed. Not drastically, but enough. There was a composure to her now, a calm maturity that came from learning to protect her heart. When everyone finally left, plates empty, voices fading down the hall, she lingered by the doorway, jacket in hand. "Dinner was nice," she said softly. "You seem good." "I am," I said. "And you?" She hesitated, then smiled faintly. "I found someone. Closer to my age." I nodded, and though I'd rehearsed this moment in my mind 100 times, it still hurt in ways I couldn't admit. "That's good," I said. "You deserve that." Her smile faltered, just a little. "He's kind. But sometimes, when I need honesty, I still think of you." I didn't know what to say. The words sat between us like the last embers of a fire, fading, but too warm to touch. She stepped closer, enough for the scent of her perfume to reach me, familiar, restrained, devastating. "Do you ever think of me?" she asked quietly. I wanted to lie. To make it easier. But lies between us always felt wrong. "Every now and then," I said. "Usually when it rains." Her breath caught, a small, involuntary sound. We stood there in silence for a moment longer, two people who had once meant too much and could never say so. When she finally hugged me goodbye, it was brief but real. Her head rested against my shoulder, her heartbeat, her warmth, her restraint all pressed gently into that single second. And then she was gone. The house felt impossibly still afterward. Her laughter lingered faintly down the hall, like a song I knew too well. And I realized then, some connections don't fade. They simply learn how to live quietly inside you. It's been almost a year since that night. The house feels quieter now, not lonely, just still. I've grown used to the silence again. It greets me in the mornings like an old friend who knows when not to speak. Most evenings, I find myself in the same place, the study, the chair by the window, a cup of coffee cooling faster than I drink it. Outside, the light slants through the same blinds that once cast golden stripes across her face. Funny how the smallest things can hold a memory hostage. I still see Lena sometimes, not often, just enough to remind me she's real. She drops by with my daughter, sometimes for coffee, sometimes just to say hello. She's happy now, I think. There's a steadiness to her voice, a peace I don't remember seeing before. She doesn't bring up the past, and neither do I. We talk about small things, books, work, the weather. Safe topics. Things that don't shake the air between us. But every now and then, when our eyes meet over the rim of a coffee cup or during a passing smile, I catch that same flicker, that quiet understanding that some feelings never demanded action to be real. People often say love is about possession, about being together. But I've learned something different. Sometimes love is about recognition, the sudden, startling awareness that another person has seen the parts of you no one else has bothered to look at. And even if they walk away, that truth doesn't fade. That's what she gave me. I think about that first afternoon, the knock on the door, her standing there asking for advice about love. I wonder sometimes if she knew, even then, how that question would change us both. She once asked me, "How do you know if someone really loves you?" I told her, "Sometimes you only notice it when it's too late." But now, I think I'd answer differently. You know it's love when you can let someone go, and still feel grateful that they passed through your life at all. There's a peace that comes with that kind of understanding. It's not dramatic. It doesn't demand grand gestures or perfect endings. It just settles in quietly, like morning light spreading across an old room. I closed my journal, a habit I started after everything, and glanced at the clock. The day's almost gone. My daughter's laughter drifts faintly from the living room. And for the first time in a long while, it doesn't ache to hear it. Before I turn out the light, I catch myself whispering something, not for anyone else to hear. She asked me how you know if it's real. I say softly, almost smiling. And now I do. The house stays silent, the kind of silence that feels like an answer. Because what remains isn't regret, it's remembrance. And that, I've learned, is its own kind of love. Sometimes love isn't about being together, it's about what stays after. Tell me in the comments, would you have told her how you felt?